Hello, I'm Father Gregory Pine. This is Pines with Aquinas, and in this episode we're going to talk about vocation. So not in the sense of like, I want you to become a priest and a Dominican friar, but in the sense of vocation, which would be like everyone's unique and personal way by which to live their calling, right? So to live the divine life poured into their hearts. So that should apply to everyone, at least I think it does. Unless you're like a rock or a shrub, or like a lobster, and then it probably doesn't apply to you. But you should be commended on your ability to push play on a YouTube video, given the fact that you are subhuman. Regardless, keep watching, and we'll talk about it more. Okay, so we're talking about vocation. The question is this. Matt Yu asks, according to Aquinas, is one's vocation their own prudent choice rather than some sort of mystical invitation that one needs to hear from God and then respond to? That is an excellent and perspicacious question. So in short, it is one's prudent response. But let's take it from two vantages. Let's take it from God's vantage, and then let's take it from our vantage, and then let's reconcile the two. Not that they're, in a present state of non-reconciliation, but you get it. So from God's vantage, right, God is provident, which is to say God not only knows things to be, but in knowing them causes them. And God is eternal, which is to say that God holds all time together in himself. So time is a kind of limited experience of being. So on account of the fact that we are only so much, or we are in a limited fashion, right, we experience our life in succession. So there's a past, there's a present, and a future, and we pass from past to present to future, as it were. But we only ever possess our life kind of from moment to moment, whereas God possesses his life wholly and simultaneously. So God is provident, right? Which means he knows and he causes. He is eternal, which means that he knows and causes all times and places, or in all times and places simultaneously by his one act of to be. And so God knows, who we are, what we're going to do, how it's going to play out, whether it will end well or ill, and he's going to cause efficaciously in us, a sufficient offer of grace and our consent to and cooperation with it, and, our justification and sanctification, all that goes beyond that. Right. The question then is, do we have access to God's providential designs, his eternal providential designs? And the answer to that is kind of, right? But in a way that's properly human. So our knowing of God's will is always circumscribed by our nature, which is to say we know God's will for our lives as human beings and according to a human mode. Now, that human mode can be healed and elevated by grace, right? Specifically by like the virtues of faith, which opens our minds to the prospect of eternal realities, or, by the gifts of the Holy Spirit, like knowledge or understanding, which gives us further scope to be moved by the divine instinct or impulse. But at the end of the day, we are still circumscribed by our human nature. So then the question is, as human beings operating, right, please God, in the context of the life of grace, how do we come to understand what our purpose is? And here, I think it's helpful to talk a little bit about creation and then how we unfold or how we uncover the plans which are sown as kind of seeds in creation. So God makes us with a particular end in mind. And that end is himself, right? In all of God's activity, he makes all things unto himself. But God makes us in a way that's particular, in a way that's unique, in a way that's personal, in a way that can be aptly described as a vocation, because God's divine life is boundless, right? It's like the depths of his divine life cannot be sounded by creation. So there's no created thing which can exhaust all that there is to be said of God. And so God, in his generosity, makes many different things. And in making many different things, he affords us kind of different vantages or different outlooks on the divine life. So each of us is a kind of unique expression of the divine life, and each of us is uniquely suited to tell forth or to make manifest that divine life. All right, so how does God want us to do that? Well, return to this point. He wants us to do it in a human way. And as human beings, I say this often. We have minds with which to know, and we have hearts with which to love. We live in an embodied way. So it's going to involve some kind of, like embodied, intelligent choice. And the way in which we are moved to do so is by inclinations. And you have inclinations of all sorts, like you're inclined to eat and drink so that way you don't die. You're inclined to sexual intercourse so that way the species doesn't perish. But you're also inclined to certain higher goods too, like knowing the truth about God and living in society. But some of these more elevated inclinations, well, all of them really, we talk about these things as desires. And some desires for us are just kind of a natural reflex. Some rise to the level of maybe instinct, we would call them. But we can reflect on certain desires and shape certain desires so that they lead more perfectly, or that they lead more blessedly to our end. How do we shape these desires, you might ask? Excellent question, my friend. We do that by the virtuous life. So what the virtues do is they inform our habits of mind and heart so as to heal them, so as to elevate them, and so as ultimately to bring them out, to bring them into yet more perfect expression. So this is what the life of virtue does. It doesn't make you less yourself. It makes you more yourself. Thomas Merton says the saint becomes himself. And in the process of becoming more yourself, you come to discover what you are made for. And in coming to discover what you are made for, you incline spontaneously to your vocation. For practically everyone in the world, that's marriage, right? Which is not something that you need to discern whether or not you are called to marriage. You just kind of assume it. And then you go about meeting different people here, there, everywhere. And if you're attracted and then you come to discover that your common life and common conversation is a source of great delight and meaningfulness to you, then great. And then if you can picture, having a family with this other person, yet more excellent still. But then, beyond vocational discernment in the limited sense of marriage, priesthood, or religious life, vocation more broadly is a way of finding out or coming to discover in the context of a virtuous life the particular way in which I am suited to make manifest or to tell forth the glory of God. And one of the principal virtues that's operative in this kind of drama of human existence is prudence. And prudence is just right reason and things to be done. So prudence is informed by temperance, it's informed by fortitude, it's informed by justice, right? So you need to be in right relation to sense goods and in right relation to other human beings in order to think well about your end and choose for it in a way that best conduces thereunto. I just said thereunto. Whoops. Yes, but prudence is like the kind of human virtue par excellence, insofar as we, being creatures on the way, in order to attain to the end, have to make a series of choices which conduct us there. And prudence is just the virtue which helps us to sort through, kind of discern, as it were, and ultimately to settle upon those choices in a way that best reflects our end as human beings, in a way that best kind of inclines us to the good. So God doesn't have some Gnostic knowledge packet that he's going to infuse into your mind at the appropriate juncture. I mean, sometimes he does that in kind of sensational fashion, but I would say that is more the exception than it is the rule. In the ordinary course, God works in the ordinary operation of the human mind and heart so as to bring out or bring to the fore the very desires that he has sown as seeds in our nature, so that in unfolding them or in uncovering them, we give expression to the way in which we are made, as it were, to the glory of God or in his image. I hope that's helpful. Let's see. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel and push the bell, and then you'll get stuff, and it'll be great. And if you haven't yet, check out Godsplaining, which is a podcast of the Dominican Friars. Let's see. Some cool episodes that we have recorded lately include an interview with Bishop Robert Barron, which was sweet, where we talked about the Eucharist apropos of a book that he had published previously, but just republished with Word on Fire Press. That is a sweet interview. He is great. I recommend that highly. All right, that's all for me. Praying for you. Please pray for me, and catch you next time on one of these here short vids. Boom.